Hello, my name is Lynn Willard. I'm the Executive Director of ABC Counseling and Family Services, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this agency, which was founded in 1992. My husband and I opened the agency to provide specialized services to children that are affected by child sexual abuse. And we also wanted to provide adoption services to couples that wanted to adopt an infant either domestically or internationally. The types of services that we offer in the child sexual abuse program are evaluations and treatment for any child that is affected by sexual abuse. We provide educational classes to the parents of these kids, including foster parents, grandparents, any caretaker really that wants to know more about the effects of child sexual abuse on children. A lot of people don't know that we work with youth with sexual behavior problems, and that is a highly specialized area of evaluation and treatment as well as the work we do with victims. The length of treatment for these children varies from a year to 18 months. It just depends on the needs and the symptoms that the child presents with at the time they are referred to us. At any given time, we're probably seeing 350 to 400 children a week in our 6 offices in central Illinois. And those offices are located here in Normal. We were the first office to open. Decatur, Illinois, Springfield, Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, and Peoria and Pekin, Illinois. It is somewhat bittersweet for me right now because I will be stepping down as Executive Director effective July 1st of this year, 2017. I will continue to work, however, in our Peoria and Pekin offices, actually providing the evaluation and treatment services that ABC offers, and I will be trying to increase the exposure in those 2 cities. So I want to talk briefly about the Ed Willard Scholarship. We have a fundraiser once a year to raise funds in something called the Fund of Need, and this fund is to subsidize counseling for children whose parents cannot afford our sliding scale fee. So when my husband, Ed Willard, died about 8 years ago, the memorials that came in at his funeral and afterwards were given to ABC Counseling and Family Services to start a fund for children whose parents could not afford the counseling fee here. Last year we raised almost $28,000 for that fund, and of course we've depleted a lot of that money and need to raise money again this year to put back in that fund. We believe that no child should be turned away because of the inability to pay for services, and that is a huge part of our mission here at ABC.
My name is Melissa Box, and I'm a clinical supervisor at ABC Counseling in Normal. I've been with ABC for about 5.5 years as a sexual abuse therapist. At ABC, we work with kids who've been abused, neglected, traumatized, abandoned, fostered, placed for adoption, kids who've been through some of the worst things you can imagine, and kids who've had to sit in a courtroom in a chair that's too big for them, answering questions that an adult shouldn't have to ask. So it's no surprise that I often get asked, how do you do it? And isn't that hard? Yeah, it's hard. But what I always say is that kids are still kids. They still play and draw pictures, and they still collect American Girl dolls and want to play soccer with their friends. They have favorite ice cream flavors and favorite toys, and they dress up as superheroes. And we know all of these great things about them, and we also know some of the worst things. One of the things that I think is really important is something that Gary Landreth said. He's a very prominent play therapist and psychologist in this field. And he wrote, "Play is children's language, and toys are their words." When the Twin Towers fell in 2001, you can bet that there were kids all over the country knocking over towers made of blocks with toy airplanes over and over again. And when New Orleans was flooded by Hurricane Katrina in 2004, more kids pretended to rescue their dolls using boats than ever before. Kids need to play to make sense of their world. And we see this over and over again at ABC too. A 4-year-old killed me once and then brought me back to life, and killed me and brought me back to life again 12 times. She threw things at me, she made me lay on the floor, and she clung to her mother. It was a great play therapy session. And we didn't once talk about the fact that I was about to go on maternity leave for 3 months. But you can bet she was processing her feelings about me leaving and hopefully coming back. The kids that we see need to play. Some of them have never had the chance to try to make sense of what has happened to them. So we need to create a safe, predictable, age-appropriate space for them to do that. Across ABC, we have 6 offices in Central Illinois. Every office has materials that are slightly different, that have been collected over years, decades in some cases. And the variety of materials that we have is great, but not necessarily clinically appropriate or best practice. We try very hard to have child-appropriate materials, but some offices just have a basket full of Barbies. And that's not really what's best for these kids. They need materials that are designed for them, that's based in research and what the evidence says about what's most effective in working with these kids. This is a relatively recent field, the field of play therapy, in the last few decades, and we're still learning. But we see the healing that can happen in these kids' lives when they have the safe space to do that. Most people don't realize the kinds of things that we need in a play therapy office. So I want to tell you a little bit about that. One of the things that many people don't even know exists is something called a sand tray. The sand tray and the miniatures that go along with it is really a powerful way for kids to show what's happened to them or how they feel about what's happened to them when they don't have the words to do that. It's also really useful to help kids calm down. It's a sensory grounding experience that can really help them when they get very anxious or agitated. And unfortunately, that happens in therapy. The other thing that we do a lot with kids is helping them process their trauma through fantasy play. So things like hand puppets, finger puppets, dolls, and especially a dollhouse is really, really helpful for us to have the tools present so the kids can reach for what they need. Again, when they don't know how to say it, they can show it. The assessments that we do at ABC Counseling are really unique, different than anyone else in Central Illinois. And in order to do those assessments, we need a set of anatomically correct dolls for every single office. These are anatomically correct, and we tell the kids they have all the same body parts that we do, over their clothes and under their clothes. It sounds strange, but it's really, really important because a lot of these kids have had some really strange experiences that they don't know how to explain. So the anatomically correct dolls are really helpful for us in giving them a visual representation so that they can explain what's happened and make sense of it. Some of our clients have had really traumatic medical experiences or really confusing experiences involving police. And so having materials like dress-up kits for firefighters, police officers, and doctors, as well as the tools that they may have seen and objects they might have seen during those experiences, having those available to the kids is really, really helpful so that they can, again, show you what happened.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good time. My name is Thomas Jenkins, and sometimes known as Tom, usually. and also known as Santa. And so been working with ABC Counseling for about 14 years now as a child sexual abuse therapist, and just a great agency. Love the agency. What I'd like to do tonight is to tell you a story about a 7-year-old boy that I seen for about a year. And when he came to me, he had just been placed in his 3rd foster home. Lots of behavioral problems. Was in special ed classes at school, which he really struggled with. We'll just call him Stan. That's not his real name, but we'll call him Stan. And with Stan, there's an assessment process. We completed that, and treatment actually began. And treatment had reached a point where Stan had to tell his story about what had happened to him. And what had happened was his mom and his uncle sexually abused him on several occasions. Now, Stan, I had his foster mom sit in just to help calm Stan down and to be able to tell his story. And he was able to do that, and struggled with it some, but was able to do a pretty good job telling his story. And then afterwards, I said to Stan, Stan, I think that you are a hero. And he said, you mean like a superhero? And I said, yes, just like a superhero. And he asked, well, why? And I said, because you did 2 things that were very, very impressive. I said, first of all, what you did was very, very brave. And secondly, by telling your story, you are actually saving other children from being hurt like you were. And his parents, or his mom and uncle, are currently in prison for what they did to Stan. Anyway, the next day, Stan goes to school, goes to his teacher, and says that I'm a superhero. And the teacher asks, well, why are you a superhero? And Stan just says that I save children. A few weeks later, Stan needed to tell his story again to the Children's Advocacy Center in Bloomington. On the way there, Stan's foster mom stopped by Walmart, picked up 4 superhero costumes for him. And Stan chose Batman to go into the center to tell his story. So he got all dressed up in his Batman costume and went in there and did a really good job telling the story of the abuse that he had endured. And came back here, and I told him how proud I was of him telling his story. And he just smiled. Didn't really even say anything. He just smiled. After that, again, Stan had had all kinds of behavioral problems. The foster mom and dad were very good with him and eventually adopted Stan. And at that point, it was a real turning point in Stan's life. And he started doing real well in school. He was in special ed classes. He's now in regular classes and doing really well. And so then it came to the point of, like, my work with Stan was pretty much complete. So we had our last session together, and which was really cool. I had put together a framed picture of a newsletter article that I'd written about Stan, and I gave that to them. And so, but what they gave me was, it was a nice card, and gave me a big bag of candy, which I can't show you because it's all gone. And then he gave me this coffee mug, which superhero coffee cup. It's got my name on one side and it's got his name on the other side. And so then Stan gave me this this figurine of Superman, and on the box he wrote, "You will always be our hero. Thank you for everything." And so that was huge. Now, with Stan, I could tell he really liked this, and so he's telling me all about, you take this, you can shoot this and shoot that, and you have fun with it. And I said, hey, let's just open this up and play with it. He goes, no, this is just for you. And I thought, wow, because I know he wanted to play with that. And that's the character of Stan. And so in thinking about all of that, I kind of come to the conclusion of that's the work that we do here at ABC. We try to turn pain into power, and sometimes superhero power. And so what we're asking you to do tonight is to be our hero and to help save children just like Stan. So if that's something that you're interested in and willing to do, let's just get those checkbooks out and get to work at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.